Hello and welcome to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich.
What's up, Jason?
Well, it's an incredibly shocking and sad day. We're just over a day from hearing the tragic news that Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash. We later learned that one of his daughters and 7 other people were in that helicopter crash. And, we're here to talk about Kobe's career, the good and the bad. Obviously there are, I think we both have complicated feelings about Kobe as a person and, to a degree as a player, not, taking anything away from his greatness as a player or, I think it's really what stood out over the past, day is how much he meant to people and how great people felt about watching him play basketball and how much he inspired through that. And it's just incredible to see the outpouring of emotion. Obviously you can't not be affected by it and be part of, the community that we're part of and seeing so many people hurting, because of this event.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's one of these like transcendent moments as well because like a minute didn't go by, today or over the last few days where I either wasn't getting a text message about it or I wasn't having people come up and talk to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, what about, what was Kobe's, like just people talking about Kobe Bryant. And it's not only just because like people know that I do this podcast or know that I really like basketball history, but just like, hey, you're a human being on this earth. What is your thoughts on this Kobe Bryant death? It's like, cause I saw some people sort of saying, it's Kobe Bryant. He's just an athlete. It's just this or whatever. But you see what's going on and you see the outpouring of support. And you see how it's leading off news stories. And it's not just like, this is one of the more famous people in the world too. I mean, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people maybe have tough time grasping if they're not, an NBA fan or a basketball fan or a sports fan or whatever, is that this guy is internationally known. It's not like just this little niche group of people that like basketball think this guy's pretty good. Like this guy is a huge deal in China. This guy's a huge deal overseas. He's a huge deal to the sporting world. And as we've seen today, he's a huge world, deal to the world at large and especially this country. And yeah, every broadcast, every newspaper, everything's been leading off with this. And it's one of these unbelievable kind of you'll remember where you are moments, or you'll remember the time when you first read it. And I think my story is pretty similar to a lot of people that I've heard is, I got a text message of somebody saying Kobe dead or Kobe died. And I was just like, what the hell are you talking about? And I looked at my phone and, it was weird because, you can never quite trust what you're seeing. And I saw a little bit out here and I'm like, this doesn't look right. And I kept refreshing and refreshing and refreshing. And as I did, it kept like, it was like another stab in the gut where you're like, oh no, oh geez, oh God. And like, once you saw everybody had like the same information for a little while there, and then it was confirmed that, it was definitely Kobe Bryant that died. It was just like, holy shit. Like it's just one of those moments. I'll always remember that feeling and always remember that, like just being overcome with emotion. And again, like you kind of mentioned it as well. We're not, people that listen to the show know that we have kind of a complicated thing with Kobe Bryant in terms of how we thought of him as a player. And it's not like we're going to come out here and bash him for an hour. That's obviously not going to happen. We're going to talk about some of the greatest games he's ever had and some of the great moments he did and how great of a player he was and stuff like that. But like, what I've noticed over these last few days is that like, I know like the way that I feel and I'm kind of like, oh man, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this. But there are people that are like really torn up by this. And I absolutely get it because your favorite players, I mean, if this happened to Vince Carter, he retires and then, that happens to him, I'd feel that way. If we all have players of our generations, and I think you and I, where we are in our lives and where we are age-wise, we're like a little bit before the Kobe thing. Like I'm just a little bit before, like when I was watching the NBA or when I first got into it, Jordan was still in his prime and I saw the beginnings of Kobe Bryant, but there are a lot of kids and we're seeing a lot of players in the NBA who their frame of reference for like legends in the NBA and the best players that they knew when they grew up were Kobe Bryant. And you're seeing from those people how much it tears them apart. And it's unique in that way where like, I think you and I can kind of take a little bit more of an approach look and kind of like, okay, let's kind of like look at, Kobe Bryant's career and celebrate the legacy and all that sort of stuff. But I absolutely get that there is a large contingency of people that just lost like their hero or who lost their favorite athlete. And that's just like an unbelievable feeling as well. And you're seeing it from players. You're seeing it by, the way the players are reacting while they're reacting on social media, the way they're reacting in the games. You're seeing, I think right as we're starting this recording, the Pistons are all wearing number 24. Trae Young's out there, changing his jersey numbers and doing all that sort of stuff. The Lakers and the Clippers are postponed. Like the NBA universe, and especially the guys playing the league right now, you're seeing how profound his impact is on them, in a way that like almost nobody else can touch. And there's no other way that really like, because this generation, I mean, that generation that's playing right now, I mean, Kobe was a lot of their entry points, and it's pretty remarkable how big of a deal it is, losing him.
Yeah. I mean, and he's one of the 5 most famous basketball players ever. I would say, especially with the global growth of the game over the past 25 years. Just there's a huge audience who you didn't even know who Magic Johnson or Larry Bird were, or had very little idea who they were, who know who Kobe Bryant is because of how much the game has grown, and he was a big part of that growth too. I mean, he inspired a lot of that excitement, a lot of that growth in the post-Jordan era, especially in China, obviously, where he's, extremely popular there and across the world. And yeah, I mean, again, we talk about, we feel obviously for the people who, obviously his family and his loved ones and the people who were, who were touched by, whether it was him as a person or whether it was him as a player, a combination of both. And obviously there are a lot of people in the NBA family and in the WNBA and in, across the basketball world who, were touched by his legacy in some way. And he was very, a positive thing about him is he was very generous about, sharing his time and sharing, his game and trying to, popularize it. His last few years, he spent a lot of time trying to promote the women's game. Which,
I was going to bring that up is over the last few years and really in the last few months, I've really started to become like a big Kobe fan. Like he's a guy that I always respected his game. Obviously, I mean, I'm not going to come out here and say, "Oh, I didn't think Kobe Bryant was any good. This guy stunk." Like, no, he's incredible. He's unbelievable. But I always I never really quite loved the game, and I never quite loved the human being behind him. But over the last few months, and hearing him talk, and seeing how much he had been doing, and seeing how much he loved his daughters, obviously, and how much he really loved basketball and loved kind of teaching the game, and yeah, like you said, there was I forget where it was, maybe Jimmy Kimmel, I want to say pretty recently, he was on there, and they said, I think he had a quote where people said, he said people come up to him and go, hey, when are you and Vanessa going to have a boy so someone can live, keep the Kobe legacy going? And he's like, why? I don't need that. I got her. Like, she's going to keep the legacy going. Like that, that's who's going to keep the legacy going. And when I heard that, it was like, oh, okay, like, this guy's kind of cool now. Like Kobe had, because it feels like, and the one thing that I've always not loved about Kobe Bryant, and it goes to Michael Jordan too. Like people are always amazed that I don't really like Michael Jordan all that much. It's because like uber competitive, like that's just not me. It's not quite my vibe. I'm not that kind of guy or whatever. And it felt like Kobe Bryant over the last few years, particularly like his last year in the league, it kind of washed over him, and he kind of went, you know what? I'm going to appreciate what I have and appreciate what I've done and appreciate everything that's been given to me in this league and my game and how much people appreciate me and all that sort of stuff. I'm just going to kind of let it go. I'm going to let the uber competitiveness go. I'm going to let the desire to win and the telling you how many rings I won and all that stuff kind of washed away from him in those last few years. Then he retires, and it felt like it kind of came back again a little bit. Like I feel like he wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do in his post, basketball life. So you got a lot of like Kobe Bryant sniping at LeBron about, oh, I have this amount of rings and you have that many round rings, and like that stuff just gets a giant eye roll for me. I'm like, all right, whatever, man. Like who cares about that stuff? But then like in the last few years, it felt like he was getting back into the game, but he was getting back in the game in terms of like teaching the next generation and teaching his daughters and just enjoying the game again and enjoying like embracing LeBron James, letting the Lakers fans know, hey, no, like root for this guy. This guy's awesome. Like, don't worry about me. Root for this guy. And he's at the courtside, hanging out with Luka Doncic, and he's, talking to him in Slovenian or whatever. And it's like, that's really cool. Like, so it felt like this guy over the last few years was somebody that was really kind of, in a lot of ways, changing his personality. We're going to talk about that a lot during this show too. Is Kobe was a guy who many times underwent like big transformations in his career and in his life, and even the personas that he took on as a player. And it was very interesting to see what he had been doing the last few years, and it had become a point where I was like, this Kobe guy is actually like I like this Kobe. This is the Kobe that I would have always been down with if he was a little bit more of a mild mannered, a little bit more of a chill guy. But then again, like I can't ask for Kobe to have been that during his life because that's not what Kobe was.
Right.
And you know what I mean?
Right.
And the reason so many people love him is because of the Mamba stuff, because he was that, because he was the uber competitor. So I'm not saying anybody can't like him. I'm just saying I didn't really, I'm not a big fan of that style of player, that style of sort of mentality or whatever, but I'm not going to discredit anybody and I'm not going to say whatever. So that was, that made Kobe Kobe, and that's what made, him so interesting. And that's why, I can't wait to talk about some of his greatest moments here, is because like those greatest moments happen because he is that type of person and that type of player. So it's really cool. But yeah, I had really found myself giving a lot more affection towards Kobe over the last few years, because it felt like he had, he was just like a much more calm, a much more chill personality. And like you said, the women's game stuff too, like this was a guy who we had heard too, like privately, behind the scenes, all this sort of stuff, was really getting ready to do all he could to promote the women's game and make sure that people knew that, okay, look, there are women out here doing stuff that's unbelievable, and people are going to start becoming aware of it, and I'm going to make people aware of women's basketball and how important women's basketball is and how good it is and stuff. So that stuff, I like reading more and more about that. I was like, oh man, like especially happening when this happened, while he's going to his daughter's summer or her practice or her tournament or whatever. It makes it even that much more tragic too, because he dies doing spending time with his family and promoting his and helping his daughter continue her basketball aspirations. And it's just like, fuck, it's just. That's the part that sucks, even maybe, the most of anything.
Sure, absolutely. And, he, for me, he was more of a villain I rooted against as opposed to someone I cheered for. I mean, I appreciate his greatness, and the times where I, really enjoyed watching him play and kind of rooted him on. But generally, I was, generally more of, he was just kind of a guy you love to hate in a sense of, in terms of fandom, I guess, that usually I'm not a big Lakers fan. It's just one of those things where, I was more on the side of rooting against him. And, so it's weird now. And, a lot of this is complicated, of course, by the rape case and the fact that he was charged with rape, later ended up settling out of court, and it admitted that it was not a consensual encounter, and didn't really pay the kind of price for that I think a lot of people thought that he should, and felt that case in particular, and not all of it being his fault exactly, but that case was very, very, the way that that woman was treated, by people finding out her real name, and the slut shaming that went along, and just all the terrible things that sexual assault victims have to deal with were kind of magnified in that case. And obviously that is a huge, mitigating factor for his legacy, and is just an awful, terrible thing to do, and all the great positive things that he did do in his career, both professionally and as a person, and all the things that, that he meant to people. There's also that to add on to it. And I don't think it's the only thing that should be talked about. And I certainly think that I don't see anything wrong with understanding that people are complicated. And, if you love Kobe Bryant, or you love the way that he made you feel when he played basketball, I think that's totally great. But I think that that's got a big knowledge too. And the idea that can't be talked about, even in the days, immediately following his death, that it all has to be celebrated. It all has to be, adulation and all that. I reject that, obviously. We're not going to harp on it, but I do think obviously it needs to be considered, among everything else.
Absolutely. No, it does need to be brought up. And yeah, anybody who's like, oh, you can't bring that up now. It's like, well, that was the best time to bring it up. That's the time to do it for sure. But, it's always been very, that time and the case and everything that went around it. Yeah, it was for Phil that didn't live through it. It was a pretty vile. Things I feel like it would be different these days, but like, who knows? You know what I mean? It's so hard to know what things would be like, but it was bad. It was a really bad time for, just the way people treated the woman, and the way, Kobe seemed to kind of not take it seriously at first. And then what gave me a little bit of respect for Kobe later in the years and the aftermath of that as well, is that he was man enough to go out there and admit in one way, which again, not a lot of guys will do this. A lot of guys will just settle out of court and just say, okay, whatever, it's done and whatnot. But he, to his credit, and I think this was even part of the agreement, I think, and I don't remember all the details of the case or whatever, but I think it was a pretty powerful statement from him as well, and I don't know if enough people really, but him going out there and saying, I thought it was consensual, but obviously it was not, or it wasn't, or whatever.
Basically what he said, yes.
Yeah, which I mean is like, again, like it's so minimal. I mean, we need much better than that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But just having a guy, an athlete, somebody of that stature, willing to go out there and say like, no, I did something wrong here. I was at fault here. This is my fault. Like that, a lot of times that doesn't happen with athletes. Athletes pay,
or anyone with power, anyone with money and
right,
power.
Yeah, exactly. It's either I didn't do this, they're all lying, or here's $8 million, and let's never talk about it again. Right. And I always gave a little respect to him for that. Is like, okay, look, what you did was horrible, and what you did was heinous, and all that sort of stuff. But you are whatever, whether it was an agreement or whatever it was, that you were able to sit out there and say, hey, look, I did this wrong. What I did was wrong, and I was at fault here. And what will help some people, and maybe it's helped some people kind of get over that in some cases as well, or maybe forget about it on days like this, even though you really shouldn't forget about it, is that from that point forward, it felt like he never really got into that sort of, he wasn't a repeat guy. It wasn't something that happened a bunch of other times. It wasn't something like that. So like, you hope that this man learned and grew and became a better person for this. But obviously, like you said, you can't ignore it. It's a huge thing in his career, and it defined a large portion of his career as well. So yeah, we wouldn't be doing the career of Kobe Bryant of service unless we addressed it here and talked about it a little bit. So yeah, I've seen a lot of, like, on both ends too. It's like, you can't celebrate Kobe because he did this, and there's also, oh, you don't talk about this because we're celebrating Kobe. And it's like, you can do both. You can do both, and you should do both. I mean, in any good conscience, you should be doing both and responding to both too. So yeah, it's but no, we had to talk about it. We had to touch on it for sure.
Sure. So a little bit about the resume before we get into the topic of the show, which is we're going to be talking about 24 games that helped define Kobe's career. But just noteworthy is that, of course, 5-time champion, including a 2-time Finals MVP. He was one of the very few very few teams to three-peat. He was the most valuable player in 2008, and something shocking that we discovered, hadn't thought about, is that, of course, the NBA MVP dates back to 1956, and he is only the third former MVP to have passed away. Wilt Chamberlain and Moses Malone being the other two players, both three men who all died young. Kobe, exceptionally young at only 41. The others, in their late 50s, early 60s, but pretty incredible, given the older players. Obviously, Bob Cousy is, I believe close to 90 now. And, Bob Pettit is, probably is certainly in his 80s. Bill Russell's in his 80s. So, a lot of guys who have lived a long life, which is obviously tremendous. But that was pretty shocking right there.
It's just, it was one of these things. I'm like, oh, like somebody said that, and I was like, that can't be true. And I'm looking, and I'm like, no, okay, yeah, it really is. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what kind of my response is to it. It's just bizarre. Like I didn't look at like other sport MVPs and see like, oh, baseball MVPs. If I go back to 1956, how many of these men are alive and how many are dead or whatever. But I just feel like there'd be a lot more that passed away in almost every other sport MVP awards. I mean, I could think off the top of my head a few MLB MVPs that I know for sure have passed away since 1956. So it's just wild that it's three, and I don't know what it means. I don't know what it says, but it's just it kind of hit me on that same level. It's like, oh my god, like Kobe Bryant's dead, and like these guys that won MVP in the mid 50s are still alive, and it just shows you again how just how connected NBA history is, and how also how tragic this is as well, is that his life is cut so short, and there's just other guys dating back to many years past, and it's good that they're living long lives and all that sort of stuff. It's just it just really kind of opens your eyes of like, man, that's such a small list of people that have passed on. Right. In that amount of time, which I guess is good. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
We're thankful.
It's weird. I don't know why. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if there's go play NBA basketball, you'll live a long, healthy life or something. I don't know. It's so weird.
One of those things that, 18-time All-Star. I think only to Abdul-Jabbar, 4-time NBA All-Star, MVP. I think one of those years he shared it with Shaq. 11-time All-NBA first team, and then twice on the second team, twice again on the third team. So 15 All-NBA appearances overall. 9-time All-Defensive first team, 3 times on the defensive second team, twice the NBA scoring champion. Also was a slam dunk champion in 1997, very early on in his career, rookie year, as a matter of fact. Only player with 2 numbers retired, number 8 and 24, both retired by the Lakers. And he also won 2 Olympic golds in 2008 and 2012.
Yeah, so let's get to some of these games here. As we said, we're going to do 24 games that help define Kobe's career. So we'll start at number 1. And I think this is one that a lot of people... If a lot of people, some people like your deep cut, basketball fans, they'll remember this. I don't know if everybody else will, but May 12th, 1997, Game 5, it's the Lakers versus the Utah Jazz. Kobe out of the gates, getting into the playoffs his first year. And he came into the league. He's 18 years old. He's Kobe Bryant. He's very confident in his abilities. And Game 5 of the Western Conference semifinals was like, okay, well, now you're in a league with men, sir. Welcome to the men's league, because Kobe Bryant, he has a trio of air balls in the overtime. I believe he had one to close out the game, and then a bunch more in overtime. Or I forget when it came all through. When they all happened. But yeah, he has a bunch of air balls in this game, 4 to be exact. And the Utah closes out the Lakers. They win the series 4-1. And this is one that Kobe has brought up many, many times, that like he needed this. He needed to be humbled a little bit to go like, okay, look, I'm still a boy, and these are all a bunch of men, and like this is what I need to do to get better, and this is how these failures, I will come back from these failures, because many other people would have just said, "Oh God, I choked in the biggest moment, and it's over for me, and I'm done." He didn't. He came back and he made obviously his career that much better after this point. But yeah, it's pretty amazing here. Yeah, with the amount of air balls and really just costing his team this game and costing his team the shot in the playoffs. And this is a very talented Lakers team at this point too. I mean, the Jazz were obviously super, super talented as well, but we're talking Van Exel, Eddie Jones, Shaquille O'Neal, Robert Horry, Kobe Bryant coming off the bench but playing big minutes. Jerome Kersey was on that team as well. Like there was a lot of Derek Fisher even on that team as well. I mean, there's a lot of really good talent, and yeah, they bow out to this game against the Jazz, and a lot of it is because of Kobe.
Yeah, well, it's funny because actually watching the clips of that game, like the shots that he took, they weren't too bad of shots. Like they were okay. They were fairly open shots. It was just, obviously the fact that he missed them in such an embarrassing fashion in a big moment. Again, this being, Game 5 in a series, they're down 3-1. So it's already, in Utah, it's already a tough scenario, but yeah, they only lose by 5. Kobe hits a couple of those shots, and they're, they have a chance to win it. So, I think one thing that stands out is, he's one of, 7 Lakers, playing significant minutes in this game, and is trusted as an 18-year-old to be in this situation. And then, of course, for whatever reason, unfortunately for him, does not deliver. 0 of 6 from 3, 4 of 14 from the field, just 11 points. So, it was, again, it's part of that narrative of him. He was not a bad rookie at all, especially for 18 years old. I mean, he wasn't, obviously he was, coming off the bench. It took him a couple years to really develop as a star, but he wasn't a bad player, but he definitely, he took some growing pains. He took some lumps. He, as 18 years old, and, a game that was not as friendly to young players as the game is now. Didn't really know as good at, bringing those guys in. So, Kobe was breaking new ground along with, Kevin Garnett as guys who were coming, straight from high school into the pros. He was the first guard to do so, and
right.
Groundbreaking in that way.
Yeah, I think we kind of take that for granted of like how hard it, how it was like an 18-year-old jumping into this locker room. Like I just mentioned the veterans here. You got Shaq, you got Robert Horry, Nick Van Exel, Elvin Campbell, Eddie Jones. Like these are not like, real young dudes. And you have this 18-year-old that just pops up here. And anybody that knows Kobe's personality knows that he's not exactly like, the nicest person in the world, or the guy that gets along with everybody the easiest. And I'm sure he, came in with a big chip on his shoulder. And that the veterans were like, who the hell you think you are? Like, you're nothing, man. Like, you're an 18-year-old. Get out of here. And I know there was a story. I think Robert Horry said it on, it was either NBA TV either today or yesterday, said that like the biggest thing that annoyed him is like, they couldn't drink in the locker rooms anymore because he was under 21, and they were like, no, you can't drink in the locker rooms anymore. And they're like, what? Like, screw this guy. Like, no, get out of here.
Got him. Yeah.
Like, we want to drink. Like, it's after the game. Like, that's what we do. But because they didn't want, to show a under 21-year-old in a locker room with a bunch of like beer and alcohol or whatever, they had to stop doing it. That was like the thing that annoyed Ori the most. And I get it. Like, I'd be like, no, get out of here, dude.
I want my beer.
Yeah, right. I'm done with the game. I'm gonna open a goddamn beer. It's
right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that like, again, and this is like a thing that like, nowadays nobody would ever do that. They'd just be drinking protein shakes or whatever and then go back to the the hotel or whatever. But like, this is a different era. This is a different league, and yeah, it wasn't as conducive to like 18 and 19-year-olds jumping in and yeah, the transition of the league, and we hear that from Kevin Garnett too. It was just like, all right, go. And it's like, oh shit, I'm like 18, man. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, imagine yourself. What did you do when you were 18? I was an idiot. I couldn't do anything. So, yeah, the idea of like, hey, be a professional athlete. All right, go. It's like, yeah, that's not so easzy.
Yeah. Well, I think Kobe's nickname of Showboat was, given the sense what his teammates thought of him at the time,
It wasn't super endearing. Yeah.
Right. But in his second year, the 97-98 season, he starts to really come on. And one of the real notable games from the early part of his career was, the first true, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan duel. This is in December 17th, 1997. And Shaq is out with an injury. Kobe's still coming off the bench, but he, is really starting to. He's already had a series of games over the past few games where he's pushing his career high into the upper 20s, and he had a 30-point game recently. He does that again here against Jordan. Kobe has 33. Jordan has 36, and what's notable, there's a lot of moments that I definitely recommend checking out the, YouTube clips of this because it's real fun. I mean, there's a lot of, back and forth between them and them taking on each other. Kobe hits 20 footer from the corner off a screen right in Jordan's face. Jordan draws a foul from Kobe in a shot fake. Kobe beats Jordan on a backdoor cut for a dunk, and then there's, you see them each, drawing fouls on each other, Kobe attacking the baseline and spinning around MJ, then drawing a foul on Longley, and Jordan, posting up on Kobe, getting a nice spin move. But then the pass ends up being a turnover, and then Kobe, runs across the court, ends up, finishing with a reverse layup on the other end on a nice pass. So, and then Kobe, you see him, the young legs with a crazy windmill dunk toward the end. And the game itself, it's a blowout. The Bulls win by like 20 or so. But it is really impressive to see Kobe just the versatility he already had in his offensive repertoire. Just so many weapons, so much poise and skill for a player of that age. And and then Jordan at the end of it touting Kobe's skill and confidence at such a young age in a post-game interview, clearly could see that, that there was something special there for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, and Kobe obviously, you can tell from this game, and there's many other clips out there, modeled his early game off of Jordan, really modeled all of his game off of Jordan in terms of the way he conducted himself, the way he talked, the way he acted, the way he stepped on the court, the way he shot and stuff. So that was always like a thing that was, and we got that like when LeBron came out, it was like, oh, the next Jordan, and everybody was kind of quick to say, LeBron's more of like a Magic type of guy, he's a little bit more all around. There was no doubt that like who Kobe Bryant was trying to be like. And yeah, that this moment was one that was important for both men, as competitive as they were, because Jordan knew that as well, that Kobe was trying to be like him, and Jordan had been throwing off a bunch of baby Jordans and the next Jordans year after year after year, and now here comes this guy, and this one really for the first time ever in the wake of your Harold Miners and to your lesser extent your Jerry Stackhouses and those sort of guys, all the ones that were like the next Jordans. It's like this Kobe guy. This is a big game and an important game of his career because it's like, oh, all right, this guy, there might be something here with this Kobe guy. And this might be the heir apparent. This might be the next quote unquote Jordan or whatever after, the league had tried so hard to find that next one and create the next Jordan as well. And one thing that I think does help Kobe, jumping ahead into his career is that a few years down the line and a little bit later, Kobe kind of made his own personality and his own character. as well, and didn't feel again like he was just the next Jordan. But that's all people wanted in the late 90s. Is okay now, and when Jordan goes away, who's going to take the mantle? Who's going to be the next Jordan? It had to be like, it couldn't be another good player. It had to be somebody that was like Jordan. So it's like, oh, this guy's from North Carolina. Oh, this guy dunks, or this guy's 6'6", or this guy's bald. And it's like, there's other ways. Like, we could just have a good player that's just good for being good. But people were just obsessed with that at the time for whatever reason. So
yeah, well, and in fairness, to Kobe, obviously emulating Jordan, like who better to emulate? I mean, who better to, he obviously, and you're right, he definitely, branched out his own and did a lot of other things, that Jordan didn't really do, but that was the right guy to emulate. I mean, he was the right,
sure.
The work ethic and, the skills, he absolutely, it made sense for him to do that. So, that's absolutely something that, definitely, I honestly, it's kind of cool in a way that he didn't run away from that he just, kind of was like, Jordan's a guy.
He wore it. Yeah, he wore it.
Yeah.
Where a lot of those other guys, it would be like, they would do something and they'd be like, oh, this guy's the next Jordan. And he'd be like, no, please, no.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I want to do that. Like, no.
He wasn't afraid of it, which is cool.
Yeah, he was just like, no, that's it. I am the next heir apparent or whatever, which again, like, doesn't endear yourself very well, but like, if you can own it and you can be it, then that's and he went for it.
Absolutely.
So our next game here, 1999, we're going to jump to the 1999 season, February 5th. 1999 against the Houston Rockets. And this game isn't really, an all-time performance, but it's really symbolic in a lot of ways because Kobe starts this game. He scores 25 points, collects 10 rebounds, and he helps the Lakers defeat the Houston Rockets by 8 points. So the real big reason why we picked this game is, so after starting only 7 games his first 2 years, which was just a byproduct of like, oh, this guy was hurt. He was not in the regular starting rotation. He would start because Eddie Jones was hurt, or he would start because whatever. But he wasn't a regular starter. He was a bench player his first 2 years. But he starts this game, and the reason why it's in February is because the lockout, obviously the 1999 lockout, and pretty much outside of rare occurrences or injuries or some other reason, for the next 1,196 games of Kobe's career, he'd start. This was his first start, his first like real "you're a starter" start, and he would never look back. He'd be a starter from that point forward. And Eddie Jones would start over Kobe Bryant for a lot of those first 2 years in LA. He'd be traded in March of that year as well. Ironically enough, to the Charlotte Hornets, who should really just stop doing trades to the Lakers, because they're like, hey, yeah, we'll take Eddie Jones. You can take Glenn Rice, and
actually, that trade didn't work out so badly for him. Eddie Jones was good for the Hornets.
No, he was fine. It was just like the fact that then they just won a title with Glenn Rice being a big part of it. It's like, darn it,
sure,
gosh darn,
sure,
like Kobe Bryant and Glenn Rice, like two of the 3 important players of that team. But no, Eddie Jones is a fine player for them as well. But this is just a symbolic. The game itself is it's a pretty typical Kobe game, 25 points or whatever. But he never looks back at this point. They give him the mantle. He is the starter, and there's never really another run where he's not starting unless something goes wrong or he's injured or whatever, he's hurt that game or whatever. Otherwise, he starts the rest of his career. So
yeah. So we transition into the new era for the Lakers in starting the 2000 season. The last few years, of course, it's the beginning of Kobe's at the beginning of his career. Shaquille O'Neal comes over as a free agent the same year that Kobe's a rookie. And the Lakers are a bit of a disappointment. It's fair to say. They have good regular seasons, but they flame out in the playoffs against the Jazz a couple seasons. In '99, they flame out against the Spurs. But Phil Jackson comes in, of course, the Chicago Bulls coach, and brings in the triangle offense and brings in a whole different system, and of course coaching style, and the the Lakers, with the emergence of Kobe and with Shaq, being consistently healthy and able to be dominant, take over the league and dominate the league for the next 3 seasons. And 2000 in particular, of course, it's the first year of that when we weren't sure whether it was totally going to work, and in fact was on the precipice of failing in the first year, relatively speaking. It is June 4th, 2000, Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals against the Trailblazers. The Trailblazers are up by 16 in the fourth quarter, but famously the Lakers come roaring back. We've all seen the highlights of the the Shaq, the Kobe to Shaq alley oop, and the crowd just going nuts. In that game, Kobe 25 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. Just a tremendous, great performance by him. He's really starting to be definitely, the number 2 in the 1-2 punch of, between him and Shaq. And then, 10 days later, game 4 of the NBA Finals against the Pacers, Shaq has a monster stat line of 36 points and 21 rebounds. But, Kobe, after Shaq fouls out, Kobe down the stretch has 3 big baskets in overtime, giving the Lakers a 120-118 victory, basically, putting them up 3-1 and allowing them to eventually win the series in Game 6. And interestingly enough, there's a Basketball Reference stat dating back to 2000. It says that Kobe Bryant took 122 field goal attempts in the last 2 minutes of close playoff games, shot almost 42% on that, which is better than LeBron James, Tim Duncan, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry all those times. So obviously, I'm not saying a definite conclusion of clutchness there, but given the fact that Kobe took a lot of shots and could be shot happy, and the shots that he took did not always seem like the wisest ones, that's a pretty good stat right there.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's not bad at all. And that's 2 great games that really signify that the growth of Kobe from not just like guy on the Lakers or great piece of the Lakers, but like neck and neck with Shaq is like the most important parts of those Lakers. And that's not to discredit Shaq at this point, because Shaq was still an absolute monster at this point.
Right.
But Kobe emerging and being what he was like, oh no, like this team they now have 2 superstars. Uh-oh, like what are we going to do? And there was always this idea that Kobe probably could become that guy. That he was named an all-star starter, I think, before he even started for the Lakers, because he was like popular, but it wasn't like he hadn't achieved that yet. There was still just the expectations and the idea of what he was going to be. And we see really over this last period of 2000 him finally feel that confidence and finally feel like he's going. And these 2 games are great, signifiers of like, oh no, this guy is like, he's ready to go. And now he's a superstar. And there did feel like a real big change of the guard, during the course of the season as well, where he really took it to that next level and really, became a superstar.
Yeah, for sure. Next in 2001 season, it is December 6th, 2000, Kobe's first 50-point game. It comes against the Golden State Warriors in a loss, in fact, with Kobe scoring 51 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds. Was 18 of 35 from the field, also had 8 turnovers. Definitely, to a degree, that somewhat the prototypical early Kobe game. This game also, Antoine Jameson for the Warriors had 51 points as well. We talked a lot more about this in our recent 50-point series. We'll have some links to our shows on that. We also will have our links. We got more in depth on the Kobe Shaq years for the Lakers, so we'll share that as well to get it really in depth on some of these great games and the relationship between Kobe and Shaq, which we'll talk a little bit about here, but get a lot more depth on that. But this was the first of what would end up being 25 50-plus point games, and he had 6 60-plus point games in his career. So obviously, it was an incredible scorer, and had some of the great scoring performances in NBA history, and this began that run.
Absolutely. Yeah, great stuff here with the 50 points. And I was kind of surprised that he didn't have as many 50-point games. I felt like he would have probably had more, but he played definitely in an era where, points weren't getting scored all that much easily. And he was not a guy who despite being a great scorer, wasn't a guy that was like, would pop like, he's not like a James Harden type guy who feels like easily can get to 50 almost every night. Like that wasn't Kobe. It was nothing came very easy to Kobe Bryant in terms of his offense sometimes. But
I mean, there was an era where some of his peak years, later on, 06, 07. I mean, he had an incredible stretch of games that almost felt easy for him at that point. I mean,
right.
I mean, 25 times it is the third most in NBA history. So,
never mind. Okay, I take it back.
So that's pretty good. Anyone who's not Will Chamberlain, that's pretty amazing. So, but yeah, I mean, there was a point where it felt like he could almost do it any time. And, later on he would have that incredible stretch of doing so. But yeah, he did have the disadvantage of playing a lot of his career in the slower era.
And also, triangle with Phil and
right, which was a perfectly fine offense for its time. Great. I mean, obviously he had a last.
Here's Jason with that take. Yeah, I don't know about this triangle thing.
Right.
Yeah, he got some titles, but I don't know.
Yeah, but later on, maybe not the best offense. But for a while, absolutely, great. But it was a slower style. Also, there was sort of that in between period where the defensive rules changed, which allowed more helping. But there was not offenses hadn't figured out that if you space the floor, you can counter that and you can open up a lot more things. So Kobe he didn't have the space that more modern guys are working with a lot of the time. So I mean, it was harder in that respect, to be able to, put up some of that score with, with the slower pace and with, the rules disadvantage for part of his career. I mean, if he played, his career 10 years later, he might have had, 40, 50-point games or something like that. I mean, that's definitely, I think, a possibility. If he just happened to play in most of his career in the slower era.
Absolutely. Move on to the next game here. This is our 7th game here. It's a little bit of a cheat. We're going to put 2 games here, May 31st, 2000 and June 2nd, 2002. They're both 2002. Sorry, I said May 31st, 2002. These are back-to-back games, but they're important games because it's Kobe putting the Kings away. So it felt like for a while, the only team that really, really seemed to challenge the Lakers, overall challenge them, other than Portland that we mentioned. But once they were ready, once they kind of slayed the beast of Portland, it felt like, oh God, no one's going to touch this team. This team's unbelievable. The only team that got really, really close was the Sacramento Kings. And this year in particular, they got really close because the Kings had the Lakers on the ropes and potentially ending the dynasty before it really began. But obviously, there's the big shot from Robert Horry that saves a lot of it as well. But more than that, Kobe, really shined in the final 2 games of this series as well. He scored 31 and 30 points respectively. I also had a double-digit rebounds in both games as well. And particularly Game 6, Kobe looked extra special. He scored 31 points, had 11 rebounds and 5 assists, only 1 turnover. He shot 10 of 20 from the field and a perfect 11 and 11. From the free throw line. And that was, the early parts of that series, if you remember, it was it didn't feel like Kobe and Shaq really were feeling themselves and Kobe wasn't quite there. And then once he got back on track, once Kobe was on track and then you added Shaq and his, complete unguardableness or whatever it was at that time, it just felt like, oh, great. They finally were able to kind of put the Kings away. But this is a pesky team and a little pesky run there for the Kings. But yeah, Kobe really stepping up here and saving this dynasty because if they lose to the Kings here, it's hard to believe that, maybe they win 2 titles in 3 years or whatever, but they just don't have, like you said, the aura of the three-peat and how important that was. Or, oh God, do we have to pay Pat Riley now for that? Sorry.
Oh no.
I think you may have said it earlier too, so I'll get the checkbook ready here. Okay.
Maybe Pat will give us an exception.
On this day, of all days, come on, Pat.
Of all this days,
have some context.
Exactly. Have a heart, Pat. I mean, it's worth noting, man, that Western Conference that the Lakers dominated for, those 3 years and made 4 finals in 5 years. I mean, you're talking about, Tim Duncan Spurs. You're talking about this awesome Kings team. You're talking about some great Mavs teams with Steve Nash and Dirk. That Portland team was stout for a few years. I mean, that the West was stacked at that point. The East, it was not good. Which was
no. That's why a team with Aaron McKee is his 3rd best player. Found their way into the
I mean, and so the finals of that era are a little bit of a bummer for the Lakers because it just seemed like the Lakers, handled it so easily. They were tested a little bit, but but man, that those Western teams, and obviously the thing that none of them could match up was against Shaq, and they just didn't have anybody who could defend or really compete with Shaq. Shaq was just a monster when he put his mind to it, in those years and was basically unbeatable. And obviously Kobe did his part too, but yeah, I mean that was, I mean they had that really tough, and the Kings, being the toughest team there, and really coming really close in 2002. To preventing that three-peat again. Yeah, that 3 in a row, and changing the course of I think cementing their legacy and honestly cementing Kobe's legacy early on in his career. I mean, obviously he did great things afterward, and did many more meaningful things, and won the 2 championships later. But like, he's 24 years old, I think, at the end of those 3 titles right there. So he's incredibly young, and he's most of his career ahead of him already. But already at that point, he's part of one of the greatest teams in NBA history, and
he's not along for the ride either. And I think these games are ones that symbolize it as well. The ones that you had mentioned prior, in the 2000 playoffs, he's not just a guy, riding along with a really good team. It's like, no, he is the reason they're a great team. You know what I mean? He's there.
Right.
So and that's important. Again, like, he's 24. He's very young. Like, a lot of other guys are not that accomplished at that age. Like, many guys are not accomplished at that age. So
yeah, absolutely. And looking at the 2000 next game in the 2003 season, January 7th, 2003. Kobe shot 18 threes in a game, which I guess is not a huge surprise, but he made 12 of them, which was a then NBA record, and of course, a career high. Lasted as a record for more than decades. Now been broken by Steph Curry, but yeah, he never had another game with 10 plus threes in his career. I mean, he was, he certainly shot the 3, but he wasn't, known for, for being a huge 3-point shooter. But for whatever reason, this night against the Sonics, competing against Gary Payton of all people toward the end of Gary Payton's run with the Sonics, incredible scoring bench, 45 points overall in there, and a little bit of an aberration in his career, but absolutely a tremendous performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, maybe Gary was like, "Hey, you can't hit threes" or something like that. So
right.
Like,
yeah,
all right. I'm sure it was something like that. That's a classic Michael Jordan thing too, where it's like, "Hey, you can't do this." So Michael's just like, "All right, cool." That's all. And then the whole game, he just proves, "Yes, I can." So I wouldn't be surprised if Gary was like, you can hit every all these jumpers, but you can't hit any threes. And Kobe's like, "All right, cool. I'll show you. I can do it." So but really, amazing game. Yeah, fun that he never hit 10 plus threes in a game, and here he just explodes for 12 out of nowhere. So
right. So next, also same season, he had a streak of 9 straight 40-point games. And this is still the team. This is when Shaq is on the team. I think he may have been out a bit during this stretch. Actually, he does play in the one game we're going to highlight, which was a game against Denver where he had 51 points on 15 of 28 shooting. 18 of 20 from the free throw line, plus 37 in the game, which not too bad. Of course, Denver not the stoutest team at the time, but certainly a great game there, and just showing that he's carrying the scoring load more. Even in these games where Shaq is playing, and it is becoming as the team evolves, it is Kobe is taking a larger role, and that's obviously leading to there's personal conflict between the two, and a professional conflict between the two players that later ends up tearing the team apart. But they do. 2003 is finally the season where they do not win the championship. They do fall to the Spurs in the playoffs, and they have to, you kind of at a crossroads and have to make a decision to see how they're going to bounce back.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'd see, obviously, the stuff that would happen and the following year we'd have, Kobe and Shaq stay together, and then Malone come in, and Peyton come in, and all that sort of stuff, and then the breakup there, and it's just this is a very weird era in Kobe's life, because obviously we're talking 2003 as well. This is also during the rape era. This is probably the lowest it went from Kobe. Not only was he being convicted of that crime, and obviously pleading guilty to the crime or whatnot,
charged or
whatever,
right,
whatever,
not convicted, but you know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah, exactly, charged,
right.
But then obviously falling into then like him clearly like feeling like he's breaking up this dynasty, and Shaq pretty much in no words saying, yeah, the reason this dynasty's ending is because of Kobe, and obviously the Malone Peyton stuff would happen, and then after that would happen, I know that there'd be a lot of sniping back and forth between Karl Malone and Kobe, and it was like, this is the time where it just felt like, what do you do? But what's going on with this guy? Like, you know, he had all these accolades early in his career, and he had been such a popular player, but yeah, he'd sort of reached his low around this point, and these next few years we're going to talk about is him kind of trying to figure out what the next step of his career was going to be, and you know, he finally got the team to himself. He finally got everything he wanted. It was finally all about him, and I think you'll end up finding that, yeah, he was a lot more miserable that way versus, you know, being in a collaborative team effort and all that sort of stuff. But regardless, we'll talk about this game here, the 10th game here, April 14th, 2004, 2 overtime victory versus Portland. So the Pacific Division is on the line here. It's in the balance here. Bryant hit 2 nearly impossible shots. The first over Ruben Patterson to force overtime. I remember Ruben Patterson would always tell everybody that he was the Kobe stopper, and I think that made Kobe very upset because Kobe would always fucking play against, like, very well against Ruben Patterson. So I think Ruben should stop saying that because it didn't work out. The second shot he made came out of a timeout with 1 second to play. Game-winning 3-point basket. They gave the Lakers a 105-104 victory and the division title over the Sacramento Kings. So, yeah, a big moment on a team with a lot of turbulent stuff going on, but a good moment to get them. Yeah, and hell, you know, everybody talks about how, like, dysfunctional it was, but, man, they got to the – not only did they get to the finals, but, like, yeah, they had a pretty decent effort, too, but obviously, you know, ran into the Pistons and that buzzsaw, and Malone got hurt and all that sort of stuff. It would have been very interesting to see what would, you know, how narratives change if, like, Malone doesn't get hurt and they win that title. How, you know, do they break up? Probably, yeah, but, like, yeah, it's just a very fascinating time in Kobe's life right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's what we kind of won, you know, last great moment of that Lakers era is, you know, winning that game and getting the better playoff seeding and helping them, you know, get to a point where they're able to get to the finals again. And, and losing the finals, but certainly it put forth a good effort. And you talk about after that, of course, you know, Shaq gets traded away. It's a new era for the Lakers, and it's an era with a lot less winning, but a lot more huge Kobe Bryant scoring performances.
Yeah, and a lot more Smush Parker. So
yeah, more Smush Parker than anyone ever needed, for sure. And you know, the two most notable ones are in the 2005-2006 season. The first one, December 20th, 2005, Kobe Bryant scoring 62 points in 3 quarters, outscoring the entire Dallas Mavericks team through 3 quarters. He sits out the fourth quarter, and the Lakers, of course, win easily, but you know, you kind of wonder at that point, it's like, okay, how many could he have scored? Could he have gotten to 80? You know, at that point, it's almost like an impossible idea that anyone could ever get to 80. Obviously, getting to 100, but no one else had, you know, no other player had scored more than 73, I believe, other than Wilt. So David Thompson having scored 73. No one else had done that. No one else really, you know, no one ever pushed that limit in an instrument a long time. So, you know, you wonder what would happen there. And he also, like, the Mavericks were, you know, 18-6 before that game. They were a really, really good team. Yeah. Not a great defense, but a really, really good team. And getting to be a better defense than they had been. So, you know, and that's shocking. But then, of course, you know, the one that everyone remembers just about a month later, January 22nd, 2006, celebrating the 14th anniversary of that almost, Kobe Bryant, 81 points against the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, unbelievable here, and we've talked about this many times on the show, and this has been, you know, the lore of this 81-point game many times. But yeah, the thing that a lot of people might forget about this wasn't just him, like, unabashedly just chucking, you know, Devin Booker style here and trying to, you know, just get as many points as possible. I mean, they had to overcome an 18-point third quarter deficit, so he was just like, all right, I don't want to lose to the Raptors, let's go, let's do this. And so he ends up making 28 of 46 shots, 60% from the field, which, like, again, when you say the number, you're like 28 of 46. You're like, that seems like a lot of shots. It's like, that's 60%. It's not bad. Yeah. 7 of 13 from 3-point range. So he decided, all right, I'll channel my inner Gary Payton and go, okay, I'll get some threes out of here. And 18 of 20 free throws as well. And it's just a remarkable game, and it's an awesome one to watch too, because it's pretty mundane. Like, it's a very good Kobe game through 2 quarters, and then it just becomes like an unbelievable, like, all-time great. The last, you know, third quarter and the fourth quarter is just like, oh my God, nobody can stop this guy. And, like, you could tell that the other Lakers players know that, hey, we're just going to get out of the way and let this guy idea what he's going to do. The Raptors know that Kobe's the one that's going to score. They just can't stop him. He's just unstoppable. But yeah, it's funny because you'll watch it. It's not like, because sometimes you could tell like early in the, like, oh boy, they're going to have a game here. Like this could be one. But the reason why is like because he didn't get out of the gates like real hot is why the Raptors were able to get up and have a pretty good lead. And then it forced Kobe to kind of say, all right, let me do this. Let me do what I have to do here. So really awesome game though. Really just a fun game to go back and check out as well. And there's many videos and highlights and stuff to watch. But yeah, 81 points, the most since Wilt. So
yeah. And also for that month, Kobe averaged 43.4 points per game, which was the 8th highest single month scoring average in NBA history, highest for any other player other than Wilt. He became the 5th player for a season to average 35 or more in a season. And that was also his last season at number 8. The next season, he went from 8 to 24. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And but before that happened, he had one of his more disappointing efforts of his career. It actually began with it was a series against the favored Phoenix Suns, of course, the 7 seconds or less Suns, who were a little bit surprisingly stopped because they had lost to Amari Stoudemire for the season, but incredibly talented team. But the Lakers,
Boris Diaw ends up being a revelation. It's like, oh, Mari's out, we're screwed. And it's like, wait a minute, Boris Diaw, play power forward. It's like one of these, one of these early, like people knew that, like we knew the power forward and the stretch forward thing. There was like a few guys that came up and it all worked, but then everybody just like went right back to it. They're like, all right, that's not gonna work. It's like, no, it just worked. It's like, Boris Diaw just filled in for Amari Stoudemire perfectly. It worked.
So. It's almost like, the Suns are the future and Kobe is a little bit like the past in a sense. I mean, obviously Kobe's still young and he's still great, but it's like this antiquated isolation scorer type thing, slowing it down, playing matchups, blah, 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 versus, the Suns who, have this beautiful game and who, pass all the time and find the open man and, take threes and just get that up down the court. It's a contrast of styles and of philosophies and all of that.
I was actually watching this game earlier today before we recorded because I have it on my DVR just because I record all the Hardwood Classics and I was just trying to find one and I found this game and it's fascinating to see like the Lakers offense is like, get it down to the low post for Kwame Brown to back in and then people to cut baseline and then like, so it takes them, 19 seconds to get like Kwame Brown, like, left hook and then like, Steve Nash gets the rebound, comes down court, tosses it to Shawn Marion, who dunks it in like 4 seconds. You're like, oh yeah, there you go. Like, it just took you guys 19 seconds to get a shot that may or may not go in with Kwame freaking Brown, and then like in 5 seconds, Steve Nash ran down the court and threw a bounce pass to Leandro Barbosa, who made a layup, and then and it's like, yeah, there you go, like there it is. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like you see these two different. You're like, holy shit, this is a different league, but.
Right. So Kobe, in the game 4 of the series, ends up hitting a game winner. Thus putting the Lakers up, 3-1 at that point. However, the Suns would rally, would be pretty dominant in the next 3 games, would win Game 7, 121-90, with Kobe only taking 3 shots in the second half of Game 7, which was, definitely discussed about, he had scored 50 points in Game 6, the loss in LA. In Game 7, he was, had some, took some criticism for that. And then, he has, he has another amazing 2007 that we'll get into, but it's getting to a point where the relationship with the Lakers, seems like it's going to be frayed and some big things are going to be happening, soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is an era of, some rumblings about potential, trade demands and potential, what are we going to, is he going to stay with the Lakers? Does he want to stay with the Lakers? Do they want to keep him? Are they ready for a new era? Like, there's just so much, so much going on at this era. And I remember this felt, there's an era we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but I know personally this felt like the closest it was going to become for a while because a lot of the rumblings were about him, requesting a trade to Chicago and trying to make that all kind of work and all that sort of stuff. So that's one that I always kind of remember as well because it was pretty vivid to me. And I remember there being like legit conversations around, my city of like, hey, we're going to bring Kobe Bryant in. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Like, I wasn't the biggest Kobe fan, but I was like, oh, it's fucking better than Luol Deng.
Yes,
Heinrich, so
probably better. Yes, slightly better.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, let's do it, man. Let's go. Let's do everything we can.
Yeah.
But we're gonna talk about it in a few years here, where it gets even more dire in a little bit of way for Kobe and the trade demands, and how it kind of leads to the next generation of great Lakers teams. But before we do that, I'll jump to the 2006-2007 season here. We're gonna cheat again here with a selection of games, but this one makes sense because there's 4 consecutive games with 50+ points. This was just like, so not only that period is 4 consecutive games with 50+ games, but also just like, we're going to talk about this 8-game stretch he had. He had 65 points against the Trailblazers, 50 against Minnesota, 60 against Memphis, 50 against New Orleans, and then he scores 43 points against Golden State. So what a bad effort there, Kobe. Come on, he couldn't get 7 more points to get to 50 again. So just an unstoppable force. Kobe Bryant was at this time, but unfortunately, maybe team wise wasn't going quite as well. But yeah, this is him at his like probably his offensive best, and his being the number one in the clear focus of the team. But whether that's winning basketball or just Kobe Bryant scoring a lot of points was up for a lot of debate at this time too.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting into that off season, after after those incredible scoring numbers, and again, they had 1 year where they are the playoffs, in 05, but the 06 and 07 Lakers were pretty good teams, played in a tough Western Conference still, fall under the Suns in both playoff series. But yeah, he had, publicly, he requested a trade. He said that he was upset. He was on Stephen A. Smith's show in May of 2007 and said that he was upset that a Lakers insider claimed that Kobe was responsible for Shaq's departure for the team, publicly said he wanted to be traded, and then would later back off and said, oh, I talked with Phil and I'm reconsidering. But then later there was a video that was a posted amateur video where he was talking to some fans that he said about Andrew Bynum to trade his ass for Jason Kidd. And people seriously thought like that he was going to be traded. Like that was like a very, like it seemed like absolutely he was going to be traded. Like it felt like, oh, it's almost inevitable that it's going to happen. I mean, obviously they were able to repair that relationship. And soon afterward, they would make, a huge trade in early 2008 to bring Pau Gasol in and to, change the course of the team's history. But first, we have a big milestone just before that, we have a big milestone for Kobe to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. He is going to become the youngest player to get to 20,000 points. He's going to do that on December 23rd, 2007. He's going to reach 20,000 points at age 29, 122 days. It's a game against the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. He scores 39 points, 11 rebounds, and 8 assists. So this record has since been beaten and broken by LeBron James, but still at this point, the youngest ever to 20,000. Obviously, it helps to come in when you're 18, but still, you got to score 20,000 points and do that, in that time too. So yeah, not taking anything away from that whatsoever. But yeah, tremendous accomplishment for Kobe to get to that point.
Yes. Next, of course, the Lakers would go to the finals in 2008, would fall to the Celtics. And in that summer, August of 2008, the Redeem team, led by Kobe, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Paul, would bring back the gold to the United States. And Kobe with a really huge down the stretch in that final game against Spain with Pau Gasol, Marc Gasol on the other team. Kobe with 20 points, including 13 in the final period, to get the first of 2 gold medals that he would accomplish in his career. And that was big. I mean, that was something where the U.S. had an embarrassing loss in 2004. And had not done well, and it felt like the best players were not really wanting to be part of the Olympics for the U.S. and the program reformed, Coach K and Jerry Colangelo and all that. They were able to get these guys to buy in and play together, and obviously they've had tremendous success up until the recent World Cup loss. But outside of that, I mean that's more than a decade of of incredible dominance for the team. And Kobe obviously, set the tone there and it was huge in that game. That was an extremely close game, extremely tight game. And, other guys played well. LeBron played well. Carmelo Anthony played well. Wade played well. But Kobe absolutely, stepped up in the big moment and delivered in that big moment with all those other guys there too.
Yeah, I mean, people don't. If you didn't live through this, I don't think you know how big of a moment this was and how embarrassing that 2004 thing was. And without living at it, without knowing, because again, like Kobe didn't play in the other Olympics. Other guys just didn't. We're like, whatever, I don't really care. Everybody, It was like, all right, everybody get on board here. Like we're doing this, we're winning, and they came and it was amazing to watch this team because they played great. There was a fluidity to them, and it was back to the Dream Team style thing where it was like the best players in the NBA all came together and played perfectly together and just dominated and won. But yeah, if you didn't live through it, you might not know how important it was to get back on there, because there was also this idea too of like, oh my God, America, we don't play basketball right in America anymore. And, there was all this giant grandstanding going on as well. And then it was just like, no, we just need like our best players to play. And here they are. Maybe not, unless Larry Brown always helps too. A lot less Larry Brown. Right. Well, yeah. Usually helps as well. But anyway, we're going to move on to 2008, 2009 here, February 2nd, 2009. If you want to learn more about this, you can go to our episode, A Very Kobe Christmas, where I think we played a drinking game to this fine game right here.
I hope we did. Yeah.
I think we did. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure we did.
Yeah, pretty sure we did. Yeah. Yeah.
If not, we played it, you can play it. You can make your own drinking game up if you want.
Yeah, I absolutely encourage that. Yeah. So
Kobe Bryant scores 61 points. That's the record for the most points scored at Madison Square Garden. And as I said, we did an entire show about this, A Very Kobe Christmas. But yeah, setting an MSG record. And this felt big at the time too, because it was like, he's doing this in Madison Square Garden. This, another one of these moments that feels like it's too much of a coincidence. Like Kobe knew the moment and knew kind of the gravity of this and decided to go for it. So
yeah, absolutely. And also in June 14th, 2009, he wins his fourth NBA championship with 30 points to help the Lakers defeat the Orlando Magic. Of course, his first championship without Shaquille O'Neal on his team. Wins his first NBA Finals, averaging 32.4 points, 7.4 assists, 5.6 rebounds, 1.4 steals, and 1.4 blocks, becoming the first player since Michael Jordan to average 35 and 5 for a title-winning team in the final. So yeah, the Lakers won that in 5 games. It was actually a fairly tight series. The games 3, 4, and 5, 2, 3, and 4 were all tight games. It certainly could have been a more competitive series, but the Lakers, they handled their business absolutely against a tough Magic team that had Dwight Howard basically at the peak of his powers, and he was incredible, and they had a lot of good role players and stuff. But yeah, absolutely, the Lakers handled them. With their obviously Kobe and also Bynum and Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom. I mean, the Lakers really were able to rebuild their team and had some great players on that team. I mean, people think of it as Kobe's team, and certainly he was the best player on those team. Although Pau Gasol absolutely was close to being at that level, but yeah, that was they really were able to put together a great team around Kobe, and to get back there so quickly is pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, yeah, this the trade demands and all that sort of stuff led to the Lakers being like, all right, we got to get real serious here, because we're going to stick with Kobe, and what we're going to do is we're also going to go get Paul Gasol. We're going to get better guys around him. We're going to get a real team around him, and it led to these championship teams that we're going to talk about here in a bit. But yeah, it's just and the one thing that I always regret about this finals is that we came very, very close to getting a Kobe LeBron finals during this point too, but maybe for the better, because I think the Lakers would have probably pulverized the Cavs. But yeah, and the Magic, again, we talk about teams that kind of buck the trends of the time. But yeah, the Kings was like Hito Turkoglu was the power forward, and he just shot threes and stayed in the corner and stuff. And it's like again, you see the stuff coming through. But yeah, the Lakers were just a better overall team, just better veterans, better overall guys. And yeah, a lot of credit should go to Kobe Bryant, but a lot of credit should also go Andrew Bynum at the top of his game. Lamar Odom just being an incredible player that could guard all 5 positions at the time. And Paul Gasol, I think, because he's fallen off a lot, over the last few years, people forget just how great Paul Gasol was at this time too. So, oh yeah, he's tremendous team. I mean, they really were. They really, you put them up there with any of the great recent teams, and they certainly could, compete,
on that level, and kind of the end of an era to a certain extent with, LeBron switching to Miami, and then, kind of the league opening up a lot and playing a lot faster, and, the growth of the Warriors after that. I mean, I think the certain kind of style, a certain type of mentality, a certain type of play sort of ended with, this with this Lakers team, which, we're getting into the last championship season for, that team would be a 2010. Some things that stood out there. February 1st, 2010, Kobe becomes the all-time Lakers scorer. One day after hitting a game-winning shot against the Celtics, the Kobe passed Jerry West to become the team's all-time leading scorer with 44 points against the Memphis Grizzlies. And that, of course, leading into the second of the back-to-back, June 17th, 2010, Game 7 of the NBA Finals against Boston, avenging the loss that the Celtics had 2 years, the Lakers had to the Celtics 2 years later. And Kobe didn't shoot that great. He was only 6 of 24 from the field, but he had 15 rebounds and had a crucial pass to Meta World Peace for a three-pointer that helped seal the game. And then, and Kobe also earned his 5th title, which was one more than Shaq would end up having in his career. So certainly something for his personal rivalry as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this was an important series too, because it felt like, Kobe finally trusted his teammates and really knew that they'd be in the spots where he wanted. And that was always a big issue with some of those other teams where he didn't feel like he could trust, your Smush Parkers, your Kwame Browns, your, Sasha Medvedev and yada, yada, and all these other guys. But this team that they assembled around him, he felt like he could. Yeah. Like you said, he didn't feel like he had to do everything. He wasn't shooting well, so he knew, hey, I'll pass to, Meta World Peace, and, I'll get it down to Bynum. I'll get it to Gasol. So that was really an important moment in his career as well, to kind of know that, hey, look, it doesn't have to be just me. I don't have to be the guy. Like, I can still win a title without being, the number one guy and the dominant force. So, definitely an important one as well. We'll move to February 20th, 2011 here. So this is an all-star game, but this is an interesting one to point out because this is at the Staples Center, the 2011 all-star game. Bryant is the league's leading vote getter this year. He's on his 13th straight all-star team as well. In the game, he has 37 points, 14 rebounds, and 3 steals. And more importantly, he wins his 4th all-star game MVP, tying him with Bob Pettit for most all-time. So pretty good accomplishment there to have, the 4 All-Star Game MVPs. I mean, that's in a game where you don't really have to try. Kobe was still trying and wanted to, still to win and kind of, there was always, I remember a lot of games where the fourth quarter would get there and Kobe would have to kind of rally the troops of like, all right, let's go. Come on. Like, I want to win this thing. Where a lot of guys and probably where I would be as well, I'd be like, I don't really care that much. Like, not that big of a deal to me. Like, I'm good. Can we just go drinking? I don't really care that much. But hey, admiration for trying. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, moving on to the 2013 season, this in many ways was one of the more bigger disappointments in his career. The Lakers have a chance, seemingly like they're going to get Chris Paul earlier on. The David Stern vetoes that trade as the owner of the New Orleans franchise at the time. I guess they were still the Hornets, but they would of course soon become the Pelicans, and that's not confusing at all. Not the same Hornets, of course, that Kobe was drafted by. But anyway,
not the one that Eddie Jones played for. That's a different Hornets.
Right, yeah. Different Hornets. Yes, yeah.
That's also the Bobcats.
Right. I think. No, there was not a Bob.
Right.
We're not. So yes, 2013. Of course, after that, the Lakers swing for the fences. They bring in Dwight Howard from the Magic. They sign Steve Nash. Signing trade, I guess, with Steve Nash. They go all in on going back to the championship. People thought like, oh yeah, this could definitely be a dominant championship team, even though Nash is near 39 or so, but he's had been healthy, but played really well, previous seasons. Kobe's, he's in his early 30s, mid 30s, but he's still playing really well. Dwight's been slowed a little bit by injury, but he's still, one of the dominant centers of all time, but it just all falls apart. Nash gets hurt. Dwight and Kobe do not get along. Kobe seems determined to alienate Dwight, and not, and granted, Dwight, appears to be one of the more normal people in the world, so you can sort of understand that. But Kobe playing incredibly well at that point. But on April 12th, 2013, a game-changing injury for Kobe as he suffers an Achilles tendon tear. And even after suffering it, he is somehow able to stay in the game after the injury to shoot and make 2 free throws before leaving. He has 34 points. The free throws help the Lakers pull out a victory. It actually ends up helping them just make the playoffs. And he was playing a lot of minutes down that stretch to be able to get into the playoffs. But obviously with Dwight leaving soon after, Nash really barely playing again, and then unfortunately for Kobe, he really does not play particularly effectively for the remainder of his career. He only plays 6 games in 2014. He plays 35 games in 2015, and is largely not a positive contributor in his last season at age 37 in 2016. He does play most of the season, but definitely there are some really tough, embarrassing performances for him, especially early on in the season, as he'd already announced before. I guess it was long speculated that it would be his final season, and then not long into the season, he confirmed that it would be his final season. And of course, he had a retirement tour, to celebrate, his career at the time.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, the compounding injuries, the Achilles tear, and then the next year, I think he's getting his fractured leg or whatever. So he basically has a year where he's rehabbing a lot from the Achilles tear, and then he has the leg injury, and yeah, he's never quite the same again. Like you look at the raw numbers, and you're like, he's still scoring 22 points a game, or in his final year, he's still scoring 17 points a game. But like a lot of the numbers fall off. Like his shooting is down to like 35% from the field. His 3-point shooting he's like in the mid 20s or whatever. I think even his free throw shooting kind of started to suffer a little bit too. So it was all kind of coming, like he was still kind of getting his, and he was still kind of doing, it was still Kobe Bryant. He's not going to be able to change his game too much, but yeah, you definitely sensed that the end was near. And like you said, there were some really bad performances, and we hate to, bring these up, but hey, it's the good and the bad. We got to celebrate them all here. And, the one that really stood out to us, December 6th, 2015, Kobe Bryant is 2 of 15 from the field, 5 points, 1 of 6 from 3, negative 22 plus minus. So yeah, this is a guy where it's like, yeah, Kobe, man. And it felt, I remember at the time too, and we were doing the show at this time, I remember having this kind of thing like, man, I really wish he just would have retired a few years ago, because I don't want and I want him to go out like this. I don't want him to either get hurt in this final year, or I don't really want him just being bad and just kind of going out there and just thinking he's, still going to go off for 50 or whatever, and then not knowing it's ever going to happen, and then, all sort of stuff. So I remember at the time it being kind of a depressing year, knowing that this was the end for Kobe. But then, man, all is forgotten after that final game of his career and the final game of that season, because man, oh man, did he give us one to remember.
Yeah, 60 points. The same night, of course, that the Warriors won their 73rd game. Kobe, well, he outshined that huge moment by putting on just an incredible performance, one for the ages. 60 points on 22 of 50 shooting in the final game of his career. I would have to say by far the greatest performance in a final game that I can think of in NBA history. It's hard to beat 60 points in a game. That doesn't happen too often, especially, of course, in a finale. And yeah, the carrying the Lakers to the win. The win didn't mean a whole lot because the Lakers were not good, but absolutely for just creating a moment that was exciting, that was unforgettable, that was almost mind blowing. Kobe did it, and did it his way, and gave a tremendous speech afterward, thanking the fans and thanking his family, and now, of course, with his family and the fans suffering such a tremendous emotional loss, that adds even more. It feels even more meaningful now. That he did that and was able to do that, and give that fans that one last show, and just incredible dramatic moment, and really capping one of the greatest careers of all time. One of the greatest players of all time. One of the biggest basketball icons of all time.
Yeah, and what a perfect way to end his career as well. It's just like the exact the perfect Kobe game where he's just out there, just unrelenting, just shooting his ass off, trying to get the team to win. You know, they come back, he wins, he gets the game win. Like, it's just everything that you wanted from like the final game of Kobe Bryant. I remember, you know, I think I mentioned this story on the show before, but this was a few days before I was going to get married. So we rented out a house, and all my friends were over. So everybody that was going to be in our wedding party was over, and we were going to watch the Warriors game, and then we were going to watch the Kobe's final game. Well, the Warriors, you know, they're winning pretty handedly, and it's like, it's that year of the Warriors. So it was like stupid how good they were. You know what I mean? Like, any game they were just up like 15 all the time, and you're like, all right, I'll move over. Right. So we went and watched this game, and we were just enthralled. And it's just like, I'll always remember that, like being in, you know, South Carolina at a house, you know, a few days before I'm getting married, and just me and all my friends just going nuts watching Kobe Bryant. And like, again, like, I'd never been a huge Kobe Bryant fan, but how do you not root for that guy in that moment? How do you not just find yourself just caught up in that moment and caught up in the hysteria of it? And there was a really funny thing that I saw earlier today that I think it was Mike Tirico was talking about, you know, calling this game on ESPN, and a moment that always stood out to him, and I think it shows you how profound, you know, Kobe's impact was, and I never really noticed this until, you know, he pointed it out. Now I've seen some GIFs and some videos of it, but Kobe Bryant has to get 2 free throws to get to 60 points in this game. So he hits the first one, he gets to 59 points, and he's shooting his second one, and as he's going up for his second one, you see Gordon Hayward step into the lane. And just stepping in the lane, like a clear lane violation, like like very obvious lane violation. So Kobe sinks it, he gets to 60 anyway. And I think if somebody asked Gordon Hayward, you know, later, like, hey, what was going on with that? Or you were so off. Like, how'd you mistime, you know, Kobe's shot so much? And in no certain words, Gordon just kind of said, like, just in case he didn't make it, I wanted him to get to 60 or whatever. And it's a really cool, like, again, like for competitive balance reasons, it's like, oh man, what are you doing, dude? But also it's like, it meant that much to him of like, nah, you know, 59, that's not a way to go. You go out with 60, man, you know? So right. I appreciate that. It shows like the fraternity of the NBA and how close these guys are and how much they all respect one another for the most part. And also just, like how impactful it was. I mean, Gordon Hayward's probably a guy that grew up watching Kobe Bryant a lot and grew up, you know, idolizing Kobe Bryant. So the idea of like, hey, look, you know, I'll just do this and I'll take the blame and say I was dumb or whatever, but I really want Kobe to get 60 in his final game because we all knew that was the storybook ending, and you know it would have sucked. 57 would have been awesome, but man, 60 just had like a different feel to it as well. So yeah, just an incredible game and an incredible way to cap off just an awesome career. And yeah, it's unfortunate we have to do this episode. You know, we always said like early on in the show's history that there was like a certain level of player that if, you know, they passed away that we would have to do a show for, and I don't think I ever expected Kobe Bryant, someone of that level, to pass away like this, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, it's hard. Yeah. And, you know, you talk about how we've been blessed in a way, you know, as NBA fans of a lot of the guys who were the greatest players in history, just, you know, for whatever reason, they've had incredibly long lives, and we've been blessed we've obviously lost, you know, incredible players and lost guys, but they're a lot of the greatest of all time, you know, have lived long lives and, you know, and are still around in their 80s and, you know, into getting to 90. But, you know, it's hard. You know, even for me, you know, again, emotionally, I was not Kobe wasn't someone who captured my imagination in the way that he captured so many other people's imagination, even though I'm in all of the brilliance of his play and, you know, can appreciate, you know, what he did in his career, you know, just tremendously thing. But, you know, you can't help but feel just the way that, you know, he meant so much to, you know, to fans, to other players, to his teammates, to, you know, coaches. I mean, you know, I think everyone probably listened to this, you know, saw Doc Rivers' you know, press conference right after, you know, just the raw emotion, just how much he really appreciated him as a competitor, as a friend. You know, it's hard not to. Obviously, we all feel for that, and we all feel for, you know, everyone who's hurting from it. And you know, it's you know, we're thankful to be part of, you know, something that's just a really cool community of people, you know, just some great people who are basketball fans who, you know, like to talk about the game, like talk about the history, like to, you know, talk about all of that. And it's so meaningful to be part of that. It sucks when, you know, so many of us are hurting right now, but, you know, we're going to get through it. We're, you know, we're all, you know, we've got a lot of great basketball to watch, and we've got you know, we're able to, you know, Kobe was one of the, you know, great, players who pushed the game in new directions and made new things possible and paved the way for other great players to continue on, inspired them to play and to, do tremendous things. And the game lives on. And that's probably the greatest legacy that you could ever have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you were talking there, I just popped up my phone to see what was going on. And I see that, the Sears Tower in Chicago, or the Willis Tower is now is purple and gold, and the United Center is purple and gold. And Kobe's got no connection to Chicago. You know what I mean?
Right,
but
yeah.
It's just like that we talked about at the top of the show of people that don't quite get it. It's like, nah, man, this is a big deal. This is a one of the a huge name, like you said, one of the more popular athletes, of all time. So yeah, if you don't, it's, to the people that are feeling this way and others are saying, oh, I don't get it, it's just an athlete, you don't know this guy or whatever. That's like, you don't understand the impact that this guy had on a lot of people and a lot of, these cities don't have to do this. There's a reason they're doing this. There's a reason, every major, skyscraper in the country is purple and gold. Every, stadium is got his logo on it. It's got his face on it and stuff. I mean, it's a huge, huge deal. So it's just like, yeah, I think, and unfortunately it takes tragedies like this for us to appreciate people. And it's always how it always is, unfortunately. Artist dies, you go and listen to all their old music. Oh, this guy's great. Like, hey, I should have listened to him before, but you don't think of it. And that's, I think, is the one. There's not a positive to it, but one of I guess the positives of if when people pass away, it does seem like it's a great opportunity to go back and really learn about these people and appreciate these people and learn and watch the games and watch the highlights and go and honor them and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's unfortunate that it takes something like this for that to happen. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for checking us out. Of course, we will, we'll include links to our other shows, which we talk about Kobe or the Lakers of this era. If people want to dive in, there's some fun stuff there. There may be a joke or two that may not be in the best taste at this moment, but I think overall they hold up. So hopefully, dig into those if you want to. I know there's a lot of, tributes to Kobe out there. We appreciate you guys listening to ours. And you can find us at the stepback at fansided.com. We are on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Love a rating and review if you want to give us that. And of course, we appreciate any feedback you want to give us. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Over and Back NBA. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back again soon.